2:34 a.m., November 12, 1942. In the most remote corner of the Scottish Highlands, at the edge of a forest, Royal Gamekeeper William Moss stood still and counted 400 German paratroopers landing in the darkness below him. He was 54 years old, no military training, no weapon except the rifle he used to cull deer. He'd spent 31 years learning every single inch of these mountains, every trail, every bog, every blind ridge. And he understood something in that moment, something no British Army commander had yet figured out. The Germans had just landed in the one place on Earth that William Moss knew better than any soldier alive. Hold on a second. Let me ask you something. Have you ever known a place so well that you could navigate it with your eyes closed? Maybe the neighborhood you grew up in. Maybe the house you were raised in. That feeling where every corner, every stone, every sound tells you something. William Moss lived that feeling every single day for 31 years, only in these mountains. And that feeling on this night stopped 400 German soldiers. William Moss was born in Inverness-shire, Scotland. Small farming family, brutal winters, granite rock and peat bog as far as the eye could see. At 16, he got a job as assistant gamekeeper at Glencorrie Estate, a vast royal hunting ground in the Highland interior. From his very first day, he noticed something. These mountains weren't just geography, they were a language. The head gamekeeper, old Thomas Reed, taught him one thing in the first week. Don't look at the land, read it. Moss didn't understand at first. What's the difference? Reed laughed. Tell me what you see. Mountains, said Moss. Forest, stream. Now read it, said Reed. Where's the wind coming from? Where does the ground go soft? Where do the deer refuse to walk? Moss looked again, and this time he saw different things. 31 years, every day, every season, Moss read these mountains. He learned which valleys turned to bog when the spring snow melted, which paths disappeared in autumn mist, which ridges became impassable in a winter storm. He knew deer behavior from memory. He could tell where a herd was going without seeing them move, because the herd always followed the same patterns, the same safe corridors, the same water sources, the same sheltered slopes. And more importantly, he knew where they wouldn't go. The bogs, the blind valleys, the ground that looked solid but collapsed underfoot. That knowledge had built up over 31 years. None of it was written on any map. When the war started in 1939, Moss was 50 years old, too old for the army. He stayed at Glencorrie, kept the estate, stopped poachers, managed the royal land. The war was something distant, something he read about in the newspaper. Until November 1942, November 11th, 1942, evening. A military officer arrived at Glencorrie, Captain Morrison, young, tense, in a hurry. He told Moss something. British intelligence had identified a major German operation planned for the north of Scotland. The target? A Royal Navy signal station 12 kilometers north of Glencorrie. That station coordinated every British convoy route in the North Atlantic. If the Germans took it, dozens of convoys would be exposed. Thousands of sailors would be at risk. Morrison asked Moss one question. Where on this terrain would German paratroopers most likely land? Moss looked at the map, then looked out the window. The map is wrong, he said. Morrison frowned. What do you mean wrong? This bog isn't on it, said Moss. The seasonal flooding of this stream isn't shown. The blind valley on the north face of this ridge doesn't exist on paper. Morrison was quiet for a moment. Where would they land? He asked again. Moss thought about it. Glencorrie Valley and the eastern slope of Ben Vor. Two areas. Both look wide and flat. From a pilot's perspective, perfect drop zones. And in reality? Moss's expression darkened. In reality, the northern half of Glencorrie is peat bog. Looks dry on the surface, collapses underfoot. And Ben Vor's eastern slope has a stream, not on any map. I named it myself, the blind burn, because you can't see it in the dark. Morrison wrote everything down. Reinforcements arrive tomorrow morning, he said. Until then, keep watch on the area. Then he left. 2:34 a.m. Moss stood at the forest's edge, watching the sky below him. First the sounds, aircraft engines, low, heavy. Then the shapes, parachutes, dozens, hundreds, falling silently from the dark sky. Moss counted, kept counting. 400. Let me ask you something right now. What would you have done? Alone, a hunting rifle as your only weapon, 400 trained soldiers below you. You'd run, wouldn't you? Moss didn't run, because in that moment he understood something. The Germans had landed exactly where he said they would, Glencorrie Valley and the eastern slope of Ben Vor, and there was exactly one person alive who knew what those two places really meant. The ones who landed in Glencorrie would move west first, because west looked safe, open ground, clear sightlines. But Moss knew that ground. 400 meters west, the peat bog began, invisible in the night darkness. It felt solid underfoot at first. It wasn't. The ones on Ben Vor would move south. South looked like the shortest route to the signal station, but south meant the blind burn. In winter it flooded. Right now it was in full flood. Not on any map. Only Moss knew. Moss moved, grabbed his rifle, fixed his field glass, and climbed the mountain. Not the fastest route, the right route. The one he'd walked 1,000 times in 31 years. The path he could walk with his eyes closed. 3 a.m. Moss reached the north ridge of Ben Vor. Looked down. The German unit was moving exactly where he expected. South, toward the blind burn. Around 80 soldiers, disciplined, moving fast, and completely unaware of what was waiting ahead of them. Moss didn't wait. He raised his rifle, fired once into the air. The Germans hit the ground, weapons ready, but Moss was already moving. 200 meters east, fast, new position, new angle, fired again. The Germans reacted in a different direction this time, trying to locate the sound. They couldn't, because Moss knew exactly how sound moved in these mountains. Some valleys break sound, some reflect it, some make it disappear entirely. Every time Moss chose a position where the sound would reflect and confuse. The Germans stopped advancing, spread out, took defensive positions, and at that exact moment, the first group reached the blind burn. Ice-cold water, waist-deep, invisible in the darkness. The first soldiers fell in, panic, shouting, equipment soaked. The group pulled back. But their retreat route was exactly what Moss had calculated. They'd turn north, and north meant Glencorrie Bog. 3:47 a.m. The German unit that had landed in Glencorrie was moving west. 180 men. Moss climbed to the top of the ridge, looked down. The first row entered the bog. The surface looked solid. It wasn't. First soldiers slowed, felt the ground shift, pulled back. But pulling back was harder now, because in peat bog, there is no easy way back. Every step broke the surface a little more. Moss raised his rifle and fired 3 times into the air. This was the signal code, the one he'd taught Morrison. 3 shots. Germans trapped. Come now. 4:15 a.m. British reinforcements came from the east of Glencorrie. The Germans were caught between 2 lines of fire. Bog in front, British soldiers behind. Blind burn to the right, Moss's rifle to the left. 6 a.m. The operation was over. Of 400 German paratroopers, 312 surrendered. 47 were stuck in the bog, waiting to be pulled out. 41 were trapped by the blind burn. 0 reached the signal station. Brigadier Whitfield called Moss to headquarters. "How did you do this?" he said. Moss thought about it. "Deer make the same mistake, sir," he said. "They follow the path that looks safe. Because I know where they'll go, I wait for them." Whitfield stared at him for a long moment. "But these weren't deer," he said. These were trained German soldiers. No, sir, said Moss. They didn't know these mountains. For anyone who doesn't know them, it's all the same. Whitfield was quiet for a long time. Then he said something Moss never forgot.
Mr. Moss,
In 30 years of military service, I have never seen terrain used as a weapon the way you used it last night. Moss nodded. It's not a weapon, sir, he said. It's just home. The war ended. Moss went back to Glencorrie, back to the estate, back to his deer, back to his mountains. He never told anyone anything. When people asked, he said, helped out a bit, nothing more. He went back to his daily routine. Up before dawn, out on the estate by first light, reading the land the same way he always had, where the ground was soft, where the deer had passed, where the frost was heaviest. The same mountains, the same language, just quieter now. In 1976, a military historian researching World War II operations in Scotland came across the Glencorrie reports. 400 German paratroopers, 1 gamekeeper, 0 British casualties. The historian tried to find Moss. Moss had died in 1971, 83 years old. At Glencorrie, heart attack while out on the estate. The local paper wrote one line, William Moss, retired royal gamekeeper. Not a word about the Germans, not a word about 400 paratroopers, not a word about a November night in 1942 when one man in 31 years of mountain knowledge saved a signal station that kept the North Atlantic convoys alive. But right now, you know, and that matters. Think about this. William Moss didn't go out that night with special weapons. He didn't go out with military tactics. He went out with something he'd built over 31 years, loving these mountains, reading them, paying attention to every season, every sound, every trap they held. Is there something in your life you know that well? A place, a subject, a skill. So well that while others get lost, you still know exactly where you are. Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. If this story hit you, hit that like button. Every like tells YouTube to push this story out to more people who need to hear it. Subscribe and turn on notifications. We dig through forgotten archives every single day and bring these men back. They deserve to be remembered, and you're the reason they will be.